When someone you care about or even love hurts your feelings, it can be a really devastating experience. I think it's a universal thing to be more affected and impacted by those we love, partners, spouses, family members, and close friends, because you develop a connection, a bond, and a sense of safety with them. So when they behave in a way that is not in alignment with how you see them or with your previous experiences with them, it can kind of rattle the fabric of your reality depending on how close that relationship is. It sucks. It can be the worst. And in this video, I want to talk about an experience I had a few years ago that genuinely screwed me up. I spent, I want to say, months obsessing and ruminating over what happened, how it happened, why did it happen, how it wasn't fair, how angry I was, how judgmental I became, and why I couldn't make sense of it. But this was all sparked, by the way, by a conversation I had yesterday with someone who reached out to me through my Setmore, which is the first link in the description, to chat with me. If any of you ever want to talk, you can book an appointment and we can talk about anything, anything at all. And this person was unable to let go of something that a family member did to her. Being pissed off at someone from afar, it only hurts you. It doesn't hurt them. A handful of years ago, I had a very dear friend who lived with me in my home. And I'd been friends with him since I think I was 18 or 19. And over the course of a decade, we became very, very close in the sense that I saw him like a family member, and he was treated and accepted into my family, both like my small nucleus of a family with my wife and I, but my larger extended family as well. He was family, and we all loved him. He came to family functions. He lived with my parents when he was in trouble, and he lived with me when he needed a place to go for a couple years. I thought our relationship and our friendship was amazing. One morning, I woke up, and this friend, while he still lived with me, sat me down and essentially told me that he had been harboring resentments towards me for a handful of behaviors and things that I had done over the years that I didn't know about. The weird thing was, everything he said, I agreed with. It made sense once I knew it. I just didn't know it. It was off my radar. And I've always imagined that he thought it was strange that I couldn't pick up on these things myself. I did some stupid shit. Unthoughtful things, a handful of times, and he'd been holding on to those events. Just the night prior to our conversation, he was great. We were great. We were giggling, laughing, watching a movie. You know, it's never underestimate the power to put on a face. Never underestimate the masks that we wear, in other words, because I know I've got mine to this day, and I occasionally, like in this experience with this friend, I come face to face with someone who had not been authentic, at least in certain ways, which led to a cataclysmic disruption in both of our lives. What he decided to do was to end our friendship permanently. That really messed with my head. He ended up moving out immediately and letting me know that he didn't want me to contact him, that he didn't want me to speak with him, period. And from that second on, he was a different person with me. He was no longer the friend I'd had for the previous decade. He literally flipped a switch and treated me like I was someone to stay away from, which was so weird. First, I was just sad, and I tried to let him know that I missed him, and I tried to plead with him to just take some space, but we're best friends, like let's work it out, like everything's gonna be okay, and it wasn't that way. And true to his word, we still aren't, we don't have a relationship, and I do believe we never will again. It's been a long time now, which is his prerogative, of course, to create boundaries and stuff. I started replaying all the things I had done to support him over the years, and all of the sacrifices I had made financially and personally to help him and to support him and to be a good friend to him. And then just all the good times, and it all added up to some anger, to say the least. It added up to some substantial anger. A lot of like, well, fuck him then. Like, I'm better off without him type of thing. And I reached out to a few people and I expressed it, and it was easier for me to quote unquote hate him than to try to understand. It was easy for me to go there because I felt I had been betrayed by someone who I very much had earned some credibility with. And I just obsessed. I mean, I would wake up at night to pee and then not be able to fall back asleep because I would think about it. I would just spin and obsess and ruminate and think about it. It was the first thing I would think about when I opened my eyes. It was the last thing I would think about when I closed them. And that's a terrible space to be in. And I felt very, very powerless to these obsessions and these ruminations and these looping thoughts. I felt so powerless. And then that sort of continued to feed my anger because I victimized myself, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say, which is not good. And it all stems from love. It all stems from I clearly loved this dude. This was my guy. And I thought we'd be best friends forever. Being vulnerable and connecting with people on such a deep level lends itself well to tremendous burden and sadness if something goes wrong in that relationship. That's the dice you roll with any relationship, whether it's a romantic one or just a typical friendship. I reached out to a mentor, an older gentleman who I very much value as far as his opinion goes. And one of the things he had me do once he sensed the frantic energy inside me is he had me write this person a letter detailing everything that I was experiencing. And it was a free-form letter. In other words, I was given the go-ahead and given the structure to say anything that crossed my mind. I could write anything that was on my mind about the situation, what happened, how it impacted me, what I wanted to say, what I wish I had said, if I happened to have more remorse about the things that my friend was clearly upset about, to express that, but be as messy as I want. And then to read that letter back to him and then move on. And I did. And I did. And it helped. It helped a lot. The next thing I did is I wrote myself a letter. I wrote myself a letter from me from a few years ago, to me from a few years ago. All the things I wanted younger me to know in order to be better, to do better, to avoid the situation that happened. Basically like a hindsight's 2020 letter to me. The end of the letter to my friend and the end of the letter to myself, I had to write, I love you, I forgive you, and there's nothing bad or wrong about you. And that was hard to do. And you know what happened when I read that letter out loud? Just cried. I just cried. And I hadn't cried in a long time. And it made me cry. And I think that was really good, and it was clearly cathartic. I needed it. I just didn't realize that I was holding on to so much emotion, which in therapy I've heard described as energy in motion. This gave me a fair bit of relief, but it wasn't the final antidote to my rumination and my obsessions about the whole situation. Part of that antidote was accepting where I'd been wrong and really coming to terms with it and taking full responsibility for my actions and things I did that led to such a tumultuous ending of a great friendship, truly great friendship. But the next thing I had to do, and this took some pride swallowing, is I had to get on my knees every single night. This is per my mentor. And I had to pray for my friend's happiness. I had to pray that he had everything he ever wanted in life, that he was doing great, that he was at peace. And I had to pray earnestly to the universe, pray for his happiness. And I also, within that prayer, had to express unconditional love and forgiveness for my perceived wrongdoings, or for the wrongdoings I perceived him to have done for me, towards me rather. And I had to do this for a week, every single night. I often did it during the day. Even if you're not the praying type, let me tell you, there is something about just releasing that into the world that was very, very healing for me. And between the letters and the praying and the perspective change, it just went away. And my self my self-doubt and my self-hatred went away, because that went hand in hand with my anger towards him. It was a lot of anger towards myself, a lot of anger towards myself and disappointment towards myself. And it wasn't healthy. It wasn't good. And those things helped. And while I still don't have a friendship with this person anymore, I have moved so far beyond being angry anymore. And when I think of him, I tend to think of good stuff. I was like looking through my phone, and him and I and my wife were walking around Home Depot for whatever reason. And he was pushing me on one of those long carts, and I was filming him, and he's so funny. He's such a funny guy. Very witty, dry humor, and just funny. And we were talking in this ridiculous voice that we used to use towards one another. And we were both laughing, and Jesse was laughing. And, you know, after our issue, I would have been sick to see something like that. But now I see it and I'm just like, hell yeah. Those are some special times. I'm kind of able to hold on to those moments tighter and let go of the fact that we weren't meant to stay long-term friends, and it was just a chapter in my life. But now I'm just getting wishy-washy. Share your experiences. Know that I appreciate it. I love learning from you guys. I hope you enjoyed my story, and we'll see you guys in the next video. It's good to be on the YouTubes. Oh, you sleepy guy.